Okay, so today I'm going to talk about eyes, and eyes have been quite an issue. I've tried to make a couple dedicated videos on it, and I'm going to do that again today, but with a whole new kind of perspective on how to figure your way around eyes. But before that, just a couple of announcements. So please go to istebrak.com and go to the little Google Plus icon and join. Make sure that you're part of this discussion here. So I just posted a discussion on the wall. This wall right here is the community wall, of course. If you want to join the community, you just have to join. Read the rules, please, and just comment here. What are your thoughts? What would you like to see in our next community challenge vote? So this won't happen for another month or so, but I could at least put up a vote to kind of, and another vote after that, and another vote after that to kind of boil it all down to something everyone wants to see. It's kind of a battle right now between characters that are interacting and creature design. I'm a bit leaning towards creature design. Characters that are interacting more has to do more with animation than it does with illustration or concept art. I like to have students work on stuff that is portfolio ready, so concept art would be more enriching to your portfolio than two characters talking to each other. So especially for just basic game developments or working in freelancing or working as a contracting, that stuff just will actually get you more of a callback than two characters or animating it, or like it's just sort of animation kind of world characters interacting. I don't really assign that much animation here. Just concept art, solid, heavy illustrations, type of stuff. So please be a part of this discussion. And Patreons. The what's it called? The You might not have time for the assignment for this month, but you will have time for our meetup, which is a 2-hour critique session with all the patrons' work. So it's going to be a private Patreon meetup critique hour, and that will pretty much kind of set you up on what the next assignment will be. So every critique hour that we have for patrons is added up throughout the year, and what you have at the end is a really, really strong portfolio. So if you are looking for an alternative to private tutoring, even as a watcher, just to support the community, you can watch, but as an apprentice, you can be part of our stream this month. So that's an option for those who are interested. It is not mandatory for you to be a patron in order to join our critique hour. You don't have to be a patron. And then finally, there are those who are asking me about why I didn't look at their stuff. You guys, I went through like 100 pieces, and if I didn't get to you, I'm sorry. I can't, I'm not a robot. I lost my voice by the end of it, and it was a 2-hour session. If you didn't pick up anything that you could apply to your work, and you had to be looked at by the almighty Istebrak, and I don't know how to help you. I went through so many, and trust me, I would say the same old stuff to you anyway. So it's not that valuable, my critique, for you specifically, but the general critique that I provided for everyone is valuable. It wasn't personal, and some people are taking it personal that I didn't get to theirs. Do you guys understand that there's like almost 8,000 members in our community? I won't be able to get to everyone. So please be a little bit more reasonable, especially for getting bigger and bigger every day. And we are going to have even more and more entries, and I'm making posts to make the challenges more popular and have everyone a part of them. This means that more people will join, more submissions, which means I won't be able to look at everyone's. I could have had my mods come in and talk about these submissions, but there were just so many to go through, we would never have gone through all of them. And that was what I was trying to do, fully just pure intent to get through everyone and not leave anyone behind. So if I didn't get to yours, even after 2 goes at it, then I'm sorry. I'm not apologizing. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you for the donation, Angelina. Or was that Angelina? I'm not sure who just donated. I'm not sure. It's not Angelina. I'm not sure. But thank you very much, Michael Jackson. Thank you for your donation and for your support. Okay, so let's get started on eyes. The problem with eyes is that you guys are not realizing there is a great deal of non-eyes involved in eyes. There's a great deal of just shape stuff. So when you guys are starting off with your stuff, when you guys are starting off with your sketches, whatever it is, you should always try to see as much as possible less of the face and more of the building. So there is this assignment style that I have when I tutor students privately. It's called a traceover diagram. A traceover diagram is just the student picking up some random references of an eye. So just photographs of eyes close up from all kinds of angles. So this was my student Rick's homework, and I'm always showing this one as the example. These are called traceover diagrams, and I invite all of you to try them. The reason why they're so beneficial is because they systematically replace all of the bad symbols in your mind with functional diagrams. Always think of the eye in your mind. Your brain likes to, this is why you have to think like this. Your brain likes to store with lines. It does not like to store in 3 dimensions. It likes to store in 2 dimensions. And 2 dimensions are easily accessible with lines and outlines. Everyone please pay attention. No more chit chat. When you have this type of system in your study, when you embed this in your system, what happens is that it starts to replace whatever is pre-existing there. So if you have a symbol of an eye that looks particularly stretched out or stylized like this, or like there is no audience for this. This is, I'm sorry, I'm going to be straight up with you. This is a bad eye. Lash dependent, line dependent, over contrasting, no real radial shading, no blocking, nothing. Symbolic, this is probably your best eye, but it's way droopy all the way down. And all of this is without the structure, the underwiring structure of a traceover a functional diagram. So it just can't be any diagram. It has to be a functional diagram. So in your mind, I'm sorry I'm losing my voice already. I've been fighting a flu for months, for weeks, sorry. In order to break down your symbol dependency, store and replace them with functional diagrams. You can write that down and write that back to me for those note takers who want to take notes to get brushes. I give out brushes for really, really good notes on the community. All my brushes, if you take good notes, and I give them out. So I want to see that kind of stuff written in there. Just the main bullet points. If you want to get detailed, go ahead. The better your notes, the better the brushes you get, more brushes you get. So this is it. You're staring at it. This is the key to drawing better eyes. A traceover functional diagram that separates the components in the eye. My favorite thing about these pieces is the fact that they leave nothing behind. Take a look at this one. You see how you see the lower lip, the lower part of the thickness of the lid? This is something that someone here forgot completely. Where is it? So right over here, this person drew this eye. Because of their symbol dependency, they had one line, and then the other. This is what they're seeing in their brain. But look at their reference. Do you see all of this? Look at between here and here. This is all the inner lip. And you had no process in your brain to show you where this is inner thickness of the eyelid, where this was, it's like a waterline but on the top, where this would have been processed and applied in your piece. You had no system to show you that this was there. So what if, I mean, oh my gosh, like what if you stop drawing for a second and just analyze the eye alone? What does that do? That means that you are no longer seeing a symbol or some sort of artistic interpretation of the eye. So a traceover diagram minimizes and inhibits interpretation. All right, so traceover diagram does not equal interpretation. I'm sorry, I have to write really quickly. Diagram. So this means that when you have these functional diagrams of what goes on and the difference between the upper and lower eyelid, where the eyelid hood and where the brow bone and cylindrical shape sits on top, you actually have a line. Your brain will process this and record it. You can trust it to process this and record it, and you will have a good idea of the perspective required and the details. You will realize that the eyeball is the most essential thing that keeps the eye together, and the pupil is actually just some sort of secondary sticker. It's like a stick-on little thing that really plays no functional role in the eye other than the inner system and the workings of being able to process light and pictures with your brain. Other than that, the pupil does nothing for the external function and mechanics of the eye and the iris. And the pupil and the iris make no effect or the external function of the eye. Your eye can still rotate if you're blind. Your eyeball is still sitting in its socket if you're blind. Just because someone's blind doesn't mean the artist doesn't have to render the whole eye properly. You know, you still have to. If you're drawing someone blind, what are you going to do? What are you guys going to do? Let's say you were trying to draw someone blind. What would you guys do? You guys would probably go out of your way to over outline the eye line, lash line, and just overdo the eyebrows. And then you'll have, you know, and you'll probably sneak a pupil in or something, even if someone's blind. Just so you can, or someone has a completely milky pupil, or not even present pupil, in some sort of stance, or, I mean, trance, or some kind of character in a fantasy possession or something like that. What are you going to do? These are the questions you need to be asking yourself. When you no longer are allowed to draw a super duper lash line that is, oh, how so happy, manga happiness, and you no longer are allowed to draw the two things you depend on, which is the lash line and the pupil, because when we cartoon, this is all we're pretty much drawing. What are you going to do? You have to be able to process this functional diagram back toward, you know, outside of this dependency, the eye should still look good, and this is how you do it. This is how you do it with a functional diagram. So functional diagram is not possible. This medical kind of layer interpretation of the eye is not possible unless you have a reference. And the point is, let's say this is beginner right here. So beginner, and we're going all the way over into advanced. And somewhere, and this is the work. This is not you. This is beginner work, and this is advanced work. High realism, all right? So high realism. Your style, there's many bars. There's anatomy, there's color, there's whatever. So if you're drawing really realistic cartoons, your anatomy knowledge should be all the way up here, and you have really, really high realism. But your face can be a little bit lower. Your face can be down here and very symbolic. But typically, for any of you, the ideal, let's say the ideal is this big, beautiful, sparkly blue color. The ideal should always be here on all bars. You can decide later how back you're moving with each bar. Okay? Ideally, we never want to move back with the bar with the bodies unless it's really, really stylized. But one of these bars always stays really, really high if you're a professional with a really, really super stylized style where the eyes are their own thing and the body is its weird little anatomy. Something is always really, really high. Even those really big mouth characters, you know those big mouth characters on Netflix? That's just heinous looking creatures. But something always stays really high, and that's function. Function is the mouth moving. It has to be kind of realistic. The fact that when one walks, one arm goes in front of the other in the walk cycle, stacking, rotation. Function always stays really high. But ideally, you should be aiming high for all. You will kind of create like a recursive movement backward and adjust what you don't want as realistic. Really, really symbolic eyes are kind of what I do when I'm drawing like characters, especially the characters that I draw, those Tarzana characters. I always do a little something like this. This is as much as I need. It's really Miyazaki inspired, but the bodies that I draw have to be intact. Everything has to be intact when I'm trying to pull off the function of the body, the spine, all of that. So this all goes to a student who has no business looking at style. You have no business trying style right now, and you have no business using the style excuse, especially with me, if you're making these kinds of mistakes with your eyes. Okay? So this isn't so much an eye tutorial as it is like a description of the necessary mindset you need to have when approaching eyes, when trying to understand eyes. Some things to look out for is the sphere and the geometric anatomy of the eye, which is what is the geometric shape that we could use to summarize the eye in its most common denominator shape. That's the sphere. Okay, just a perfect little sphere, just like that. The sphere is a constant joint that rotates, and that's why you have to preserve it. And this is how it goes. Realism is anatomy, and anatomy is function. And this is why I tell you guys to look up functional or practice functional diagrams. No, don't try to draw the same old eye you draw every single time and hope that somehow, some way you get an epiphany per component of the eye. No, function means functional diagrams. Anatomy means using references. And realism is all the form that follows after, is a combination of all of that. So to approach realism, you have to have anatomy. To have realism, you have to have anatomy. To have anatomy, you have to have realism. To have function, you have to have anatomy. And to have function is to have realism. And to have realism is to have function. They're all one big, constantly looping, snake eating itself kind of beautiful circle of life. And please don't forget about this. So I haven't done much talk about traceover diagrams, but they should all be a staple homework for you. They are what I assign all my private students, and every single time my students come back after 20, 40 of these, they come back with a really, really strong approach and a very intentional brushstroke per component. So the components are, again, sphere and the geometric anatomy and the presence of the sphere. The sphere has to be present in your underwiring or working or sketch work. The rotation is there in the fact that the sphere is represented as an object that is a joint. The function, meaning that it is a joint. Okay, and it can function. The projection of the fat and the external anatomy outwards. So anatomy meaning the reference. And this, you can have a skeleton as a reference or whatever. You can have a skeleton to help you understand that. It all starts with a skeleton and the fact that there's a recessed area under the eye that you have to remember is the starting point for which that the eyeball is pushed into. So let's say this is a side view of a skeleton. Whoopsie. I'm not the best at drawing skeletons. Okay, so this is the side view of the skeleton right here. Some weird ass skeleton. The eyeball, let's give it the red color, is half in, half out. The rest of the eyeball is inside. So this means that there's an external projection of the surrounding anatomy. That's another big component to remember and to include in your traceover diagram. Then there's the tucking in of the eyeball. Again, that's all part of the same thing. Another big, massive component to include in your traceover diagrams. And by tucking in, you see how there's a lot of the rest of the eyeball. Do you see that? It's not visible, is it? There's nothing here jutting out showing the rest of the blue, is there? That's the tucking in factor. You don't always have to show the eyeball tucking in, but all this thickness right here is what has pushed the skin out and caused this circular movement out on the eyeball's shape. So we've got okay, so we've got this tucking in, this tucking in of the eyeball, tucking out of the brow bone, and then the inner lid, the inner kind of like thickness of the lid moving out. So eyelids are not tiny little paper thin things. They're not paper thin. Yes, they're generally very thin compared to the rest of our anatomy. They're thin compared to a door, but they still have a thickness to them. So please remember that it just baffles me. It just bothers me as well that there was this big section of this reference that the student missed. Why? And that's because in your beautiful little mind, you have just this perfect image in there that you learned when you were a kid, when you were learning the word I in kindergarten. You were given flashcards and you were supposed to say what the term was according to the picture. You said I, and that's what's in there right now. Remember that diagram I showed you guys? I was talking to previously I was talking to a private student about this as well, and we kind of got down to the real problem of why he can't follow references, and it was because we understood, and this is another student also had this problem, that we have the eyeball looking out at your reference, but in between you and your reference right here is this projection symbol in your mind that you're seeing the reference through. So this picture, imagine having a photo and then in front of it you put some rice paper or wax paper. You're not going to see the photo clearly. That wax paper is your symbol. It's just one big stupid ass symbol of what you think an eye should look like, because that's what you're fighting against constantly. And some fucking freaky ass eye this is. So you need to stop that. Remember this? Remember this? That's why you're doing this. That's why this student did this. They didn't appreciate that this whole section is a functional thing. It's supposed to be functioning. So this all sounds like commonplace to you. It all sounds pretty pretty normal, but to have it broken down like this should be a moment of change for you. It should remind you that you are trying to paint something that if you were to breathe life into it would function. I don't think this thing would function with flat stick-on adhesive applied eyelids, and it's not enough. It's not enough. All of this is not enough to pull off the realism. Okay? There's this big piece here that they missed, the big circular jutting of the eye, the rest of the eye hiding inside, but leaving behind some remnants on the thickness of the inner lid. So the water line that we draw is also above as well as below. Both eyelids have a water line. One of them is just more visible to us. Any questions about traceover diagrams? Yeah, the allegory of the cave, yeah. So, is it okay to do these fundamentals digitally, or do I have to learn it on paper? Sorry, it's off topic. I just want the right habits. It doesn't matter what your tool is. It's your study system. Do it in whatever medium you want, exactly. You can just do whatever medium you want. The point is the knowledge is what you're pursuing. You're pursuing the knowledge of it. So remember that aim big, aim high, aim max realism, max functionality, and max anatomy. And you will be able to step backward and create a functional style that is right in all the right places and wrong in all the right ways. And that's how you create a charming style. You have no business thinking about style right now. You have one goal, and that is to push your realism as far as possible, especially with a 14-day challenge. This artist here, I'm not sure what drew you to trying hair, but again, what's with the hair? If you're hardly capable of pushing your realism far enough, just for functionality, just so that it can be used for a job or something like that. You've pushed your eyes look like they're melting, just like that. They look like they're melting. There's no outward motion of the spherical three-dimensional under shape, the denominator shape underneath, which is actually there. We actually have eyeballs compared to a nose or a mouth where it's the illusion of a cylinder, or the cylinder is there, it's just difficult to see. This is just right there staring at you, in my opinion. Noses are harder to draw than eyes, at least front view, because the nose, the slightest little bit of rotation, the slightest little bit of rotation it throws the nose off completely, and you no longer have a symmetrical nose. In my opinion, noses are harder because they test your radial shades, your edge work, whereas here, yeah, they test you, everything is there as well, but at least the sphere is intact. At least you can trust that if you started with a sphere, you'll end with a sphere. Here you start with a pyramid, you don't end with a pyramid. So this all just looks like it's melting. Her face looks like it's just melting right off. And this is all due to the fact that you have no system in your studying, no time paid to the balance between these three at all. No time paid. Can I trace over diagrams for other human parts? Absolutely. You'll find that there is a very square-like cylindrical shape to the arms, to the thighs, to the calves. Fingers have a very cube-like shape. The more you trace, the better it will be for you to identify these. These trace over diagrams are necessary, and whoever told you don't trace, you can I don't know what, but just tell them to fuck off. Whichever idiot is out there with a really crappy portfolio, I'm very sure, tells you don't trace, don't interact with your reference, don't be a scientist, don't go in there and dissect your reference. Whoever's there telling you not to ask why and not be the scientist you're supposed to be in order to draw, you can tell them to shut off, because that is not how we study. We study and interact with our reference, and this is how you guys need to interact. There is always this, I don't know, sacred separation between you and your reference, and it has to stop. So trace everything. Trace, because it means that you have a new vantage point, a new perspective, a new way that you can remember the object. Even better than, actually not better, but equal to the effect that trace over diagrams have to your gallery is sculpting. Actually just sculpting the object that you're having trouble figuring out. Sculpting it means you're recording memories in a whole new perspective. Sculpt tangibly, sculpt with real Sculpey as much as possible. And these are all things I assign my students. These are all starting assignments for any student, big or small, advanced or beginner. I assign these things because I want to know that everything they think they know is just not as accurate as it should be, or not there at all. And my job as the teacher is to get them to interact with their references as much as possible. I only can reach so far into a student's head. I mean, I can't look into it. I can only reach so far in. The rest is all about the student creating experiences. So create experiences with the object you're having issues with. So how do you create experiences? Does anyone have any suggestions on how to create experiences with your references? So create experiences. All right, so how do we do that? Well, traceover diagrams is one. And then we have sculpting. There's another big one, which is mileage. What's another way to create an experience with your reference? Paint like a sculptor that ran out of clay. Exactly. So the more you know, the more you know that you don't know. All right, so let me see if there are any questions. If you have questions about traceover diagrams, if you're not getting it, I hope you are. I hope I'm teaching in a way that allows you to understand what I'm saying. Please write at Istebrak so I can find your question. I won't find it with the chat being as flooded as it is right now. Break down into shapes. So, yes. So what does that mean when we're breaking down into shapes? What's a bunch of floating space shapes in space called? What do we call them in this community? Form studies. Okay. So form studies is another way to interact with your reference. Create a form study equivalent of your reference. And that means that you are tracing over a nose, finding the geometric equivalent of it in space, and then rendering it in the same light source. That's another way to interact with your reference. You don't actually have to reproduce your reference. You can reproduce components of your reference. As a scientist, little cross-sections of your reference that help you identify all the anatomy that's there. Does photography create experiences? Building a visual library. Photography of different angles. Sculpting is definitely that, but if you have the same reference, you have it available to you. Photography is a wonderful way to, of different angles, is a wonderful way to interact with your reference, absolutely. Breaking down into shapes is similar to trace diagrams. When you break down into geometric shapes, you're thinking of the objects as 3D, exactly. Can you break down really quickly the colors and the strange circles you have on the brow? What do you mean? Dynamic sketching and organic forms. You will see exercising using cross contour or wrapping lines to describe forms. What are you saying? Are you answering someone? Grid lines is a wonderful way. Creating grid lines, so going to the eye that you're drawing and just throwing a bunch of, let's say that this is our eye right here. We're drawing grid lines vertically. This is a wonderful way to interact with your reference. It helps you identify which things go up and which things go down, elevations versus depressions, and then because of elevations and depressions, you understand why certain areas are lighter than others, why you can't value share. So vertical and horizontal grid lines kind of really help you show off which areas are inward with the C shape and which areas are outward with the convex shape to show elevations versus depressions. So this is all one big depression. So that's a wonderful way to interact with your reference, and you're creating experiences. All these experiences go right back into this beautiful circle of life. A lot of them come from realism. Hopefully you're using real references to interact. I am not saying you can do this with some stupid half-realistic anime drawing. with lots of filters. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about using real photographs of faces that speak to you in beauty-wise, faces that are to your taste. Another thing I ask my students to do is compile a set of references that they think are beautiful right from the get-go. So we do the 14-day challenge, we do all of that, but we do a lot of planning, and we kind of I force the student to consider if they were going to build a human being, how would they build that human being? What is their most ideal face? And that's the face we pursue. So it doesn't have to be one, big face, one universal face, one very Barbie, boring ass face. If they like the big nose, as long as they have a reference, I have no problem with it. Okay, so grid lines. There's another one, analyzing how something makes the reference successful or likable. Okay, so like just straight analysis, so written analysis. All right. Another one I would add is trend lines. I've been talking about these for a while, and landmarks to help you preserve the realism. What else? Mileage means time spent. Yeah, just the overall time spent. Yeah, good to hear and see a lot of the same things I did in my private tutoring with Istebrak. Truly worth its weight in gold. Thank you so much, Shauna. You're so sweet. Do you have a good place to find references? I have trouble around heavy makeup or overly touched up. Okay, so let's do a little Google search together, and then we can move on to the paint overs. So what I usually Google is female portrait. Let's try male portrait. Actually, let's try female portrait because of the makeup problem. All right, female portrait. Let's just do what Istebrak does on Google. I find one of these that I really like, one that's minimal in makeup, and now what I do is view more. It'll give you a plethora of very similar. Look at this, solid ass reference. Okay, this is really, really simple. This is nasty, and it's just nasty, so I don't click on that. I find one that is minimal in makeup, that speaks to me, that I like, that is front view, student friendly. This one seems pretty cool. It's a little bit too difficult for a student, so I would go for something like this, and I click on view more again. And what Google will hopefully try to do is give you references that kind of behave the same way. Again, really nice front view reference. The shadow isn't ideal, but at least it's a nude, no makeup female face you can use. You can use Portrait Studio or whatever to help you cast the shadows as you need them. You click on makeup, you're gonna get makeup, okay? So this is how I do most of this. This right here is a little bit washed out, but at least you get some radial shading and some of the major structure of the mouth and the nose. Some of the light reflection is coming from the bottom too much. Careful with fashion photography, too much makeup, too much stuff. Do you see how we're seeing more of the same thing here on the side? All right, let's keep going. So let's do the same thing with male portrait. Just tell Google you like the grayscale and it'll give you grayscale. Where do we, this is one of the ones I really love. I click on this, I go to view more. Men hopefully are not wearing makeup. So avoid celebrities. Avoid celebrities like the plague. Nobody needs to see more of their faces, okay? Study real people. All these celebrities are having, they have very, very repetitive features, very repetitive beauty triangle. So that's how they're even chosen. So try to find something a little bit more challenging. So there's just so many to choose from. There's just so many. Look at this guy's face. He looks like Shaco, realistic reference for Shaco, or some kind of Joker face. Or just look at that. You don't get anything better than the real source. Sometimes you deal with crap like Google not letting you download. I have something called Greenshot. I'm a bit of a pirate, so I just kind of go ahead and just select this. Greenshot is wonderful. Please download it. And yeah, so I just choose one that I really like and go to view more, and I jump deeper into the rabbit hole until I find some really, really amazing stuff, really amazing references. God, ugh, nasty. Some of these are really stylized, which is good for more expression or characterization that's a bit more dramatic, but some of these are just really, really great. Okay, so just look. It's just there for the picking. All right, so this one is just wonderful. Some really great references here. Stay away from large shadows. Stay away from no shadows. Find something in between. Find something wonderful in between. This guy's face is just wonderful. It's got a nice sharp cast shadow that isn't too dark, that is diffused. And this is where you go to find references for traceover diagrams. They don't have to be in color. I am so sick of seeing this guy's face. So you see him everywhere. Everyone studies his stupid ass face. Find something a little less beautiful. Find something a little bit more realistic. This guy's not wearing makeup, but he's got such an unusual balance. It looks like a realistic version of the kid from Treasure Planet. You know, this is how I imagine his face to look. Just that beautiful stacking, edge work. This is the kind of stuff you trace over. Click on View More, and you get this, but you get stuff like this, the same model. You get stuff like this. Look at all this. This is what I want to see in your studies. So hopefully that's helped you. Hopefully all this has helped you. Let's recap. Remember your sphere and your geometric anatomy. All of this is approachable with a traceover diagram. Projection of the fat outwards of the eye, tucking of the eyeball inwards, inner thickness of the eyelid. And some of the stuff that you guys forget nearly all the time is the inner and outer tear duct, little corners. Some of you are missing this on the inside, on the outside as well. Do you want to know what this does? No matter how well you draw the sphere and how much of a good boy or girl you're being with your, with your sphere, and you give your little window here between the eyelids are nice and circular, it means nothing if you paint this away. This is actually the edge of the eyeball. You can actually see the edge of your eyeball. To a lot of people, that's freaky and uncanny. Good, because it means you're finally getting it. Okay, we don't always see this line here. Sometimes the line is a little bit lower because there's thickness in the inner water line and the upper water line. Sometimes this line is lower because if there might be a hood. But do not forget this inner and outer tear duct. And finally, to make this process even more efficient, fragmenting as the final little way to interact with your reference a little bit better and create experience with your reference. Fragmenting means delaying detail or delaying components. Delaying components means that we are delaying the pupil. By the way, this is how I used to hand in my essays. It's cool. I drove my teachers mad. Delay the pupil, delay lashes. What's another big one? Delay color. Any more suggestions on what we can delay to fragment? What about taking your own picture and grayscaling it? Great. If you can get a good, what's it called? Top-down lighting at a 45-degree angle, absolutely. Create that beautiful nose shadow, those eye socket shadows. Yeah, go for it. Your face is a unique, beautiful thing, so just go for it. Delaying is hard. There it is, right there. Delaying is hard. And I have one thing to say for that. Whenever I see anything like that, I took a screenshot of this. Got another little promotion for Greenshot. Delaying is hard, Duvdev says. And do you know what I say to that? Get over it. All right? At one point or another, you can't bitch about stuff being hard. At one point or another, you either want it hard enough or you go home. Delaying is hard. Too bad. All right? Too bad. Those are one of the only times I'm going to say too bad. Oh, running is hard. I got 50 pounds to lose because my doctor says if I don't lose it, I'm going to have a heart attack soon. Running is hard. Too fucking bad. Because right now, you have to run. Right now, you have to practice. If this is too bad, if this is hard, too bad for you. At one point or another, the only answer I have to your complaints is too bad for you. Because it's do it. Get over it. It's not going to be impossible. It's not going to kill you. If it's going to kill you, then don't do it, all right? If that person has a disease where if they run, their knees pop, like Kyle from South Park, then fucking don't do it. It's going to kill you. But it's not going to kill you to fragment. It's not going to kill you to grayscale. It's not exactly delay masterpieces. There you go. Too bad for you, all right? So delaying is hard, and delaying is one of the major components here of all of this. All of this is a way to delay, really. Either you're planning to draw it with sculpting and traceovers and grid lines, or you're actually going in and drawing the full eye but without the pupil, without the lashes. You're delaying color, you're delaying masterpieces, and the fact that you're having trouble with even delaying it, too bad. Get over it. The last little tip I have for you, if all of this seems like it's too much work for you to, and I'm not telling you do this for years, all right? This is not years of work. This is just a couple months of it. This is just a couple weeks of it. That's all you really need to do. Just reprogram your mind. How long does it take typically? Like 3 to 4 or 6 weeks to develop a new habit? That's not just external habits, internal thinking habits. All habits start with our mind. And this is all it really takes. If it's too hard for you to just change the way you study for a couple weeks, too bad. Get over it. All right? I'm sorry for roasting you, my darling. I don't mean to put you in the spot. But you were honest in saying, a lot of people here are not honest, and they don't say delaying is hard. So pat on the back and applause for Dev for admitting that, you know, where their weakness is. The fact that, you know, all of this seems like too much work. They're admitting it, the rest of you aren't. So stop saying they got roasted. Thank you, Dev. All right, so let's see if there's any more comments. Delaying eyelashes and glittery shit. So the pupils are part of the glittery shit. What else? You can find black and white no makeup models on Instagram, but the images are small. Google can help you find only large images. Yeah, that's true. But what I recommend always is just try to find it through Google. Google is like an indexing thingy. It's actually what the Google rep was talking to me about when I got a strike. They said it's not our fault. We just find stuff, and that's what you searched for. We don't really keep it. So you're still gonna catch a lot of Instagram stuff, a lot of Pinterest stuff from there. As long as you do the right kind of search, as long as you're specific and you go and you spend some time, just have a session just in Google. Make sure Safe Search is on, and have a session just in Google for finding good references. It'll pay off, and you'll be able to have a wonderful library of references you can go to whenever you don't feel like Googling but you feel like drawing. You should not be Googling for 3 minutes, by the way. You should be Googling for a while. Is it better starting out with a grayscale image rather than turning a reference into grayscale? No. A lot of these references are already grayscale, but it's just because of the nature of the photography that I recommend you guys look in grayscale. But let's say we go down the rabbit hole for a colored piece. Okay, so we go to view more. Can actually find a good set of references for colored faces here. So there's that, and then we go to view more. Lots of colored pieces that you can grayscale easily. All right? Don't know who the hell these people are that I'm finding, but all right, so let's try to find another one. Female portrait. Okay, this is a great reference for the eye and the type of face, how her nose pulls her lip up. Very, very distinct facial features. You can grayscale this if you want. If you're well into your color study, you can grayscale. Warning about color studies, though, you can learn how to paint skin, but move back after you're done into grayscale as soon as possible. The reason why that's important is because there's a lot left for you to figure out. Trust me, you're not a master yet. Even if you've mastered color, you still need to shift backward. There's a lot of stuff you're missing still. Okay, so this is a reference that has makeup, but only in the lips. So maybe if we go down this, we can find more of the same. So minimal makeup, that's nice. All right, and you can grayscale these as you need them. But I recommend, just because of the nature of the photography and how it has minimal reflection and how it's minimally edited for magazine, usually grayscale portraits, they try to preserve the black as much as possible and not use too much reflection or reflectors or diffusing the shadow. All right, so all that in mind, I won't delete this note here. All that in mind, let's go into the critiques. All right, so For this piece, I really recommend you stop everything you're doing, bolden this lady, and start flipping your canvas. So, oh, another way to interact with your reference and to create experience is to flip your canvas. Add that to your notes. Yeah, Google took responsibility for the strike. Absolutely. But they just weren't vocal about it, and they didn't email me till I forced them to talk to me about it. So I'm tucking the eye in, taking the first proactive, beautiful step towards a functional diagram in my mind, which starts off with a sphere. I'm tucking all of this inward, and I'm tucking out this lip right here, this lower eyelid, so that it looks like it's in 3D. When an object is rotating, one side of it is more visible than another in 3/4 view. And I'm going to completely delete this pupil you have. Do you guys remember that little lesson I had on pupils? Delaying the pupil and shrinking the pupil. So please shrink your pupils. But I'm not sure if you guys caught it, but we had a kind of like a sketch session interview with Jerome Jacinto recently. I don't know if you guys caught it yet, but go and watch that. It's really fun. I'm going to try to get in more artists that I know. I don't know a lot. I'm not really in that whole YouTube circle. I try not to be actively. But there are some wonderful artists that I'd love to bring in. So if you guys have suggestions of who we could bring in, you guys can suggest away in the community or on Facebook. But if you guys like that 3-hour hangout that we did, I can do more of those. Okay, so we got rid of the pupil, and oh god, you have so much exposure here. And I'm kind of just focusing on blocking in the major sections here, getting more of that inner lid, more of the outer corner. These outer corners are like anchors. They're really, really necessary. Okay, so we're comparing that. Just get rid of the hair, get into the 14-day challenge format, buddy. I'm a dude. Flip. Okay, so you see where you're... What was that? What is that? Huh? I'm being really rough with you guys today. What the hell is this? What is this? What is that? Okay. No! Bad. Rub your nose in it. No! You need to have a sphere. It's supposed to be an eye. How is this supposed to rotate? Have you ever seen a long eyeball? How is that supposed to rotate? How is that supposed to do anything? Let alone one that is shaped like this. Is that supposed to, it's going to just rotate like spin the bottle. Okay, an eyeball, when it rotates, you don't know which way it went. It's just so sly. It just keeps rotating. You can see a ball in all kinds of perspectives. This is from bottom view. This is from side view. This is three-quarter view. It hasn't changed. It's the same size all around. That's the beauty of the eyeball. That's why nature gave us a nice, beautiful joint. Imagine if we had square joints. Would that make any sense? So what is that? Right? And that's what's holding you back. This is just one benefit of your geometric anatomy. Imagine applying it everywhere else. The nose kind of loses its geometric anatomy right over here. And that, along with fixing this eye, which you kind of, have a good idea with. And look at this. You have this. Is that the outer lip? Did I do that or did you do that? You have this here, which is really nice. Good job. You look. The eyeball is in front of the face. You have potential, homie. What happened to this eye? What happened? All right, stop. And then you can bring the eyeball back in a nice flattened way because of the rotation. All right, and you're set. Okay. So I'm not going to explain too much every choice I make because I've already explained it all. But I want to show you how useless these lashes are. So let's get rid of the lashes. This is going to make you guys see. Let's get rid of all these annoying little lashes. So lighten. I'm just going to choose. Just going to get rid of the lashes. Okay. Already looks better. right? Okay, let's get rid of the pupil and the iris. Okay, let's get rid of this. Look at what you had outside of your dependency on lashes and pupils. You had nothing. You had blobs. You had dirty bath water. Right? That's all you had when you were depending on this. If you can draw an eye very well with only a pupil that is under rendered and no extra little sparkly bits and no lashes and no lash line, then you can probably it means you're a sign of a good artist. You can probably render anything. But look at what happens when we get rid of all of that. Okay? This eye droops down just a little bit too much. That needs to go. Alright, so you got a nice little presence of the inner corner, which I like, but it might be a little bit too droopy. See that? Before, after, before, after. And the pupil's an okay size. I'm going to throw in the outer corner. And then thicken the lower lash line. Sometimes the the eyelid line. Sometimes the what the hell am I saying? Sometimes there's fat. As much as there is a kind of a hooded eye, it's also on the bottom. Sometimes people lose their lower eyelid completely because it's just so packed. But most of the time you can sneak it in anyway. It's not one of those things where if you were to add it, you would lose anatomy. You would only gain anatomy if you added in a lower eyelid, even if your reference didn't have one. It's one of those only times. It's like, what's equivalent to that? It's like not copying the hair perfectly. Even though your reference has completely different hair, it's such a small little detail and it still works for the components. A little bit too much dark here. Typically we have bounce light over here. You don't have a real system of an eye socket moving down. But I hope this is kind of eye-opening for you. Do you see how I'm working with a big blocking brush? I'm blocking in planes that I remember because of traceover diagrams that I've done. Okay. So flatten that. Let's move on. Right, so this inner bump means that you're thinking any time where you have a bump that interrupts the spherical shape of the eye, you need a nice tight kind of upper and lower eyelid pulled across the surface of the eyeball. Imagine if our eyelids weren't on tight. Imagine if they weren't on like the way you have pants on and it's like a belt. Imagine they just flop around, like just flopping around. The eyelids wouldn't close, they just flop. Actually, when you lose collagen and elasticity in your skin like that, the older you get, the more floppy your eyelids are. And that's when old people need surgery because the eyelid is stopping them from seeing anything. In its open state, the eyelid has lost all its tightness that it can't open all the way. And that's when the doctors have to take more skin out so that the old person can see because the eyelids are so droopy. Okay, so that has to be tight. There also has to be some space. You're showing too much space above the eye, above the iris, making the eyes look shocked. But other than that, you had a pretty good shape for the eye. You're missing the outer corner that completes the sphere. You see that? Instant eyeball. Did it hurt anybody? No. And you just have to hide this bit. Sometimes students just thicken the upper eyelash line. Don't do that. It hides form. It's disgusting. Just do something like this where you just make the eyeball look forward. Okay, and then obviously there needs to be a different approach to how you did the socket line. Socket lines kind of taper. They don't just close off at the eyelids, they kind of just taper away into the brow bone. Then this is where the presence of the eyebrow would be, just around there. The lower eyelid crease doesn't just close off at the corners, also tapers away. And if you're drawing an eye, draw the surrounding landscape as well so you know when you're showing that the eye socket is recessed. And there's that shadow. And there's the shadow of the lower eyelid because it looks away from the light. The geometric anatomy, when I say the eye is an eyeball, it's a ball, meaning it's a sphere, meaning it will have shadows in an open space. meaning there is shadows on the whites of the eyes as much as everywhere else. Okay? So the tucking in is why the eyelid crease, upper and lower, aren't synced with the edge of the eyeball. The edge of the eyeball might be down here. It might be above this line. It's the fact that the lashes have, the eyelids have a thickness to them that gets pushed out and projected even further than the edges of the eyeball. All right. And then finally, this one, which has a reference. Shit. Come on. Okay, so you're missing so much. You're missing the lower eyelid. You're missing, so you're missing the. And this is because, damn it, god damn it, you're missing all of this because your lower eyelid is not dark enough. So you're missing this little guy. So if you have any questions, write at Istebrak to ask them. If they're all the way above, I'm not going to scroll, just rewrite them. See how the eyelid tapers away, whereas you tried to close it off? Oops. Okay, you tried to close it off all the way down. Just finishes up right there, and you forgot about the inner eyelid. And then look at that. See how we see the edge of the eyeball and there's like an actual little butt crack right over there. Right, just add drawing the butt crack. I know I just said butt crack, but honestly, if I didn't, I wouldn't have had a landmark in my mind reminding me that there needs to be a crack there. Create landmarks. It's another way for me to interact with my reference. And she's squinting a bit. And of course, there's all the blending that's required after all of that. If you're asking irrelevant questions, I'm not going to answer them, especially questions about, you know, where to start and all of that. I've answered those so many times. I'm answering them right now. I don't provide personal little critiques for you only. You should be able to kind of put two and two together and see where you should start off just by observing your work. I've pretty much just outlined, you know, what is a sign of a high level or a low level, and if you've identified yourself as low level, and I'm pretty much giving you a blueprint for your studies. Do traceover diagrams, do form studies, do gridline studies, trace over landmarks and trend lines, work with references. I mean, this is all exactly what I'm talking about, and it's exactly what you need if you've just only started. Okay, apart from the eye, you've got some like proportion issues going on with the rest of the face, around the chin and the jaw area. All of this is just a bit uncanny right now. And I'm kind of just radially through smudging, trying to show off the surface of the eyelid. And then I have to just tuck in the rest. Just tuck that in because it's a full functional eye. So it needs an eyeball shape. And then we have, there's a lot left missing. See how there's a shadow here? It's kind of red before, after. It's fully rotated. There's visibility here more on one side than another. Tapering away. There's this beautiful C shape in the leftover geometry. Just like that. Please remember all this stuff. This is all that you really need to draw better. March down. Okay, so let's say some questions. When is the far corner of the eye hidden because of rotation? When you're starting Because remember, if the eye is looking forward, then the eye is smack dab in the middle of the symmetry line. So let's say this is the eyeball, and this is the 3/4 view pupil, like the iris, the lens. And this would be the inner corner. You just have to ask, you start with the inner corner. If you're rotating, don't go straight into the eyelids, because if you draw the eyelids, then you're going to show too much inner corner right off the bat, and you're just going to show a flattened version of a fake 3/4 view with fake rotation. Draw the inner corner. How much do you want of it visible? That's how much it should, that's how much you should be showing. In fact, draw it inward as well if you have to. That should be the place where you start the gesture for the eyelids, making sure that it's nice and spherical. And then that's when you get more of one side visible than another. That's the brow bone, the cheekbone, the nose line. But if you're talking about slight 3/4 view, that's almost full side view. We're talking about slight 3/4 view, starting it out here and then finding an end point. Well, another practice that I do for students is to draw 3 really, really off messed up points and try to connect them all with a line. It helps you draw better, faster lines. So this is what you're going to end up doing. So I always kind of try to push it up because there's a thickness to the lash line. The outer corner actually goes inside the eyeball. And that considers the thickness here. That thickness is in here. This is hidden. And that's pretty much all I need. I kind of delay the pupil anyway. I kind of delay it. All right, so that's how much you decide early on. If you have a reference, it answers it for you. You just have to approach it in layers. Okay, what's the best neutral reference? Top-down lighting, not too dark shadows, not too sharp cast shadows, not too much white, not too much black, something in the middle with neutral values where the lightest light is somewhere here and the darkest dark can be all the way down here, but as long as the lightest light is somewhere up here, not too exposed. When we're doing traceover diagrams, how do we tell if we're done it correctly, or will it be obvious? It's pretty obvious. You should be aiming for something that just looks like this. Aim for stuff that looks like this. So this is a bit off with the upper eyelid. I think he was dealing with a hooded eye. But stuff that looks like this in all perspectives. Color code the components and work from that. Use your vertical, and horizontal grid lines. Do you recommend going into the 14-day challenge right away or starting with smaller studies like eyes, lips, and noses? That's what I do if a student is having way too much trouble figuring out, and I'm talking about beginners, having trouble drawing an eye or just figuring out their way around, I can't expect them to draw a whole face. We take it in components, and then when I feel like they're ready, I assign a full face. So yes, fragmenting, that's an example of fragmenting, drawing one feature at a time. So, so one feature at a time. Butt crack. All right. You will lose collagen while aging and will need to get sick. Okay. Ednor asks, what should I do if my reference has very visible lashes? If I leave them out, it tends to not look like the reference. Very visible lashes almost always means makeup, which means it's a bad reference. You'll find references with normal human lashes. You can also choose not to work with close-ups of eyes, which show too much information. We never just talk to people with a huge eye walking around. We're not eyes walking around, we're bodies. So use references from full faces so that you're not confused with the detail exposure. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you everyone for watching. If you guys want to be part of this community, just go to Istebrak.com and click on the little Google Plus icon to join. Make sure you read the rules and make sure you get into this discussion for the upcoming challenge. If you want to support the community, even just as a watcher, you can head over to Patreon, or if you want an equivalent to private tutoring, this is something that I offer like this, but more in depth, specific to your portfolio. There is an apprentice category on Patreon that you can join. We have a Discord, we have private videos, private streams for apprentices only. If you want to be a part of that, you don't have to be a part of Patreon at all. This is optional just to support the community, but this is all open for the community. None of the pieces I painted today were specific to patrons or anything like that. Though some of the members here are patrons, but you don't have to be to get a critique. Just post your studies, read the rules, no bad attitude. Make sure you're not trying to refute any kind of with excuses or anything, any of the critiques you get. If you're not getting enough critiques, which are pretty much the currency in this community, critiques are amazing. Everybody wants them. They're gold now. They're like have a higher stock value than gold. Give critique to get critique. You gotta give to get. And if you're not getting enough for your 14-day challenge, go be a part of someone else's 14-day challenge, and they'll give you back their critiques as well, and you guys can learn from each other, get rid of each other's bad habits, and help each other with gaining each other's good habits. And that's it for today. Thank you everyone for joining. A Portrait Studio update is upcoming very, very shortly, hopefully within a month. And it will be followed by a Portrait Studio sale. So for those who don't own Portrait Studio and want to own it, there will be another massive sale like the one we had in the fall. I usually just like to do 1 or 2 a year. I don't want to put it on sale for too long, but I know there are many, and the spike of the price will go up as it did. It will not make it any more affordable for students, so there will be a sale opportunity for those who are having trouble with the price already. Outside of that, some of the like the components that we're going to get, a hand model, more fabric studies, full-on fabric sculptures. And for performance, what we're going to be doing is, Abu's doing this all, by the way, so props to him. Thank you, Abu. But he's trying to make it so that no matter what kind of computer you have, performance is optimized, so you never have any issues loading and generating scenes, turning on the lighting on its highest setting or anything like that, or taxing your GPU too much. Hopefully all of that will help you guys run Portrait Studio. But if you are running a $100 laptop from Walmart that's 3 years old, likely you won't even be able to run anything. So try to, if you can, you guys, update your systems if you want to run referencing engines, and make sure you read into the requirements and minimum requirements for Portrait Studio before purchasing it. There is a very, very small refund window, especially for online, and because it's a portable device and portable product, and because we're not doing licenses, because we trust you, because it's an honor system that we pretty much have, we don't do refunds because God knows who asks for one and keeps the product anyway. So to keep it fair, we do have, we allow people to become candidates. We get on video share with them, help them run their Portrait Studio better. Abu does all of that, but if you're not a candidate for refund and you're like 2 weeks after you bought it, that's really not fair. A lot of programs are very, very much like this, especially lighting engines. They don't give you refunds back at all, even within the 24-hour window. Their stores are just not allowed to do that, especially only with online products. But I hope that's out there now, and people are not expecting the impossible out of us yet again. But thank you everyone for joining. I will see you guys on Tuesday. I don't know what's going to happen with the whole net neutrality thing. I really don't know what's upcoming in my future. God only knows. But for those who live in Europe, please send us your prayers and pray for us poor American people. Our kids are getting shot down in schools, are being attacked on all kinds of fronts, and it's just turning into the apocalypse over here. So hopefully I can get out of here soon. I have no reason to be here. I'm a Canadian, for God's sake. So thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Bye.